Friday, November 22nd, 1963, was a day that Major Michael Barnes, USAF, will remember for the rest of his life. On this day, he learned that the President of the United States had been assassinated and wounded while visiting Dallas, Texas. It was also the day Michael, or Mike as he preferred, found out that his wife Rhonda had been cheating on him. If what he had just heard was true, then Rhonda had been cheating on him for most of their 10-year marriage. In addition, there was a possibility that he was not the biological father of his 8-year-old daughter Lisa. He stood quietly, listening to his wife talking to someone on the home phone. She was so engrossed in conversation with her lover that she did not even hear him enter the house. "And when is he leaving?" Mike heard his wife ask. "Wonderful. How long will he be gone?" Rhonda asked after a few moments. "No, he doesn't know anything. As far as he knows, Lisa is his daughter." "I never implied otherwise," Rhonda said. "No, dear, Lisa doesn't know either, and I think it's time for her to find out who her real father is." Mike felt like he had been punched in the stomach. But who was Rhonda talking to? And where were they going to send him? Vietnam? He had been a test pilot at Edwards Air Force Base for the past 4 years and felt he would soon receive orders. He had already fought in one war and did not want to do it again. Not wanting to hear any more about Rhonda's betrayal, Mike wanted only one thing: to leave. He was afraid that if he stayed, he would do something he would regret later. He needed information and distance from Rhonda. But Michael's marriage was dead, like a nail. With a pain in his heart, Mike stepped back from the doorframe and quietly went outside. He returned to his car and drove away, not caring if his unfaithful wife heard him drive away. He drove to the nearest civilian bar, parked, and went inside. At that moment, Mike had only one goal: to drown his grief in alcohol. When he sat down at the bar, the bartender came over and took his order and then brought him a beer. "I haven't seen you here before, Major. Problems at home?" "Yes, you could say that," Mike replied. "Is your wife cheating?" "Something like that," Mike said. "I see you have such an expression on your face. Listen, call this man. It's right in Lancaster. Help me out," the bartender said, handing Mike a business card. "You can call now if you want. You can use my phone. Perhaps you can get an appointment with him on Monday." Mike called and was surprised when Tom Hawkins himself answered on the other end of the line. He made an appointment for Monday afternoon since Tom would be busy over the weekend. They say that troubles do not come alone, and Mike was pretty drunk when the third bad news overtook him. This time it came from Walter Cronkite, who was called the most trusted man in America, according to polls. If Cronkite said something, it could be believed. "Just now," Cronkite began, holding a piece of paper, "a NASA official confirmed to CBS News that a very large spacecraft of unknown origin appears to have entered orbit approximately 3,500 miles above Washington, D.C. It is currently unknown what the intentions of these visitors are." The appearance of the spacecraft caused mixed emotions on Capitol Hill. Despite the president's desire to develop a space program to counter the Soviets, a bipartisan coalition of senators believes the money would be better spent on solving the country's pressing problems. Others say the incident shows the president's foresight on space and national security issues. President Kennedy is currently under medical observation at Parkland Hospital in Dallas, Texas, from where he will soon be released. In his absence, Vice President Johnson convened his cabinet to discuss options. Stay with CBS News for more details on this urgent report. Cronkite ended the news release. "Damn," Mike sighed, finishing his beer. "I think you've had enough for today, Major," the bartender said, handing Mike a cup of coffee. "Looks like you guys have a lot of work to do," the older man added, nodding toward the black and white television. "Yeah, I think you're right," Mike said, his Texas accent beginning to emerge as it often did when he was drunk. "Space aliens," Mike thought sarcastically. "What the hell do they want on this fucking planet?" He drank the hot, bitter liquid in one gulp, took the keys, and slowly stood up. "Be careful out there, do you hear?" asked the bartender. "Yes, yes." "Everything will be okay," Mike muttered, heading towards the door. Climbing into his car, He started it and headed home. More precisely, in a building provided by the military, which used to be a house. Now it was just four walls with a roof. He had no idea what was waiting for him inside, but I found out after a few minutes. "Oh my God, Mike, you're drunk," Rhonda squealed as he stumbled into the house. "I was going crazy worrying about you. Have you seen the news?" "What? Are you talking about space aliens?" "Yeah, I saw this at Joe's bar. They can take the damn planet for all I care," Mike snapped, collapsing onto the couch, his tie half unbuttoned and his uniform jacket completely unbuttoned. "Well, you better take care, Mr. Gray. Jim called here several times and asked for you," Rhonda said sharply. Jim Tyson, or Colonel Jim Tyson, was Mike's commanding officer. They had known each other for years, ever since Mike graduated from West Point and entered Air Force flight school. Jim was Mike's flight instructor and Mike considered a friend and mentor. But after what he learned today, Mike began to doubt. "Yeah, I'm sure I did," Mike muttered. "But as you can see, I'm good for nothing now." "Yes, I see. You're a disgrace," Rhonda snorted indignantly, heading down the corridor. "Maybe, but at least I'm not a cheater," Mike growled, causing Rhonda to stop and look around in surprise. "What did you say?" Rhonda asked, fire flashing in her eyes. "You heard me," Mike replied, "or rather, I heard you. This afternoon, I was talking to my lover." "So it was you I heard when you left this afternoon," Rhonda said quietly. "Yes, and I heard you talking to your lover. Tell me something. Is Lisa my daughter?" "Of course it's yours," Rhonda replied sharply. "You were there when she was born." "But was I there when she was conceived?" "Don't be stupid, Mage." "Of course you were," Rhonda replied in a tone that alarmed Mike. "Listen, I know things have been tense because of your frequent travels. Maybe if you were home more often." "It's not my fault Jim keeps sending me on business trips," Mike snapped, using the military acronym TDY. Then it dawned on him when he remembered something he heard Rhonda say. Suddenly his head cleared and he connected the dots. He clearly remembered Rhonda asking when he would leave and for how long. "This is Jim Tyson, isn't it?" "You're cheating on me with Jim Tyson," Mike said. Rhonda's face paled for a moment. "Don't be stupid, Mike," she replied sharply. "Jim is your friend and your commander. I'm not cheating on you. In addition, he is married and has 2 children. Do you really think he'll give it all up?" Mike knew that Jim was married, and he also knew that Jim sometimes liked to play like that 3-month affair with a cute little French girl when they were together in Europe on a business trip. "Right now, I don't know what to think," Mike said. "But I know one thing. He's the one who's been sending me on damn business trips for the last few months. I clearly heard you asking him when I would leave next time. And for how long? I'm not an idiot, Rhonda." "No, of course you're not an idiot," Rhonda said, hoping to reassure her husband. "Maybe you misunderstood what you thought you heard." "Don't try to pull the wool over my eyes, Rhonda," Mike hissed through clenched teeth. "I know what I heard." Rhonda lowered her eyes, contemplating her next words. She knew deep down that her husband would not tolerate deception or lies, which she had been doing for some time. "Look, maybe we should just go to bed. Maybe you'll feel better in the morning," Rhonda suggested. Mike recognized this as her tactic and decided to retreat for now. Then the phone rang and Rhonda answered the second ring. "Yes, Jim, he is here now. Came back a couple of minutes ago." "Wait," Rhonda said. "This is Jim. He wants to talk to you," she said, handing the phone to her husband. Mike got up from the couch and headed to the kitchen, where the phone hung on the wall. "Barnes," he said sharply, taking the phone from Rhonda. "Where have you been, Mike?" "I tried to call you," Jim asked. "I was at Joe's bar," Mike answered. "Why?" "Have you seen the news?" asked Jim. "About a spaceship?" "Yes, I saw it," Mike said. "I need you to be in the Situation Center tomorrow morning, 4 o'clock in the morning," Jim said. "And for God's sake, be sober when you arrive." General Allen flies in from Washington. Lieutenant General Allen was in charge of the Air Force's Special Test Program. "Of course, sir," Mike replied with a hint of irritation. "What's the matter, Major?" asked Jim. Mike wanted to smash Jim to smithereens, but changed his mind. He believed that there is a time for everything, and now is not the right moment. "I'm doing great, Colonel," Mike answered sarcastically. "Whatever sets you off, Mike, leave it at home. I need you to stay focused." "Understood." "Yes, sir," Mike replied. "Fine. Be here at 4 in the morning. Understood?" "I will, sir," Mike said before hanging up the phone. He turned to his wife. "I need to go to bed. I need to be at the Situation Center early tomorrow morning." "Have you eaten anything?" Rhonda asked, going into caring mode, which she was quite good at. "I ate a burger at Joe's bar," Mike answered. "I would like to say good night to Lisa. She's already asleep. Please don't wake her," Rhonda said. "Of course not," Mike replied, heading up the stairs to their bedroom. Rhonda's voice made him stop. "Mike, I really love you," Rhonda said quietly. Mike looked at the woman he married 10 years ago and nodded. "Yes, I love you too," Mike said quietly as he walked up the stairs. He looked into Lisa's room and saw her curled up in bed, sleeping, surrounded by her stuffed animals, with an angelic face. "Good night, little angel," Mike whispered, closing the door. He changed into his pajamas, then set his alarm for 2:30 a.m. and went to bed. He was fast asleep by the time Rhonda joined him under the covers. He left early the next day, giving Rhonda and Lisa quick kisses on the cheek before leaving. "Is everything okay at home, Mike?" Jim asked as Mike poured himself a cup of coffee. "No, Jim, it's not okay," Mike answered. "I think Rhonda is cheating on me." "Damn it," Jim said, showing his sympathy. "I'm very sorry to hear this. How can I help?" Mike looked at Jim, boiling with anger inside, but just shook his head. "No, you can't help," Mike replied. "Except for killing himself," Mike thought. "What are you going to do about it?" asked Jim. "I think I need to get proof and then get a divorce," Mike replied. "And God help that son of a bitch she's sleeping with." Jim's face darkened for a moment, but he quickly recovered. He knew about Mike's temper, having seen it many times over the years, and he was afraid that one day he would face that anger himself. "Any guesses who she's cheating with?" asked Jim. "I have a guess," Mike answered, watching the reaction on Jim's face. "Just don't do anything stupid. I don't want to have to break you out of jail," Jim said. Mike chuckled. "No problem, Colonel," Mike said with a smile that lacked warmth. "It's time for us to go. General Allen will be here soon," Jim said. They entered the secure meeting room and sat down at the table with coffee, greeting the other officers. A few minutes later, the door opened and General Allen entered, wearing a uniform decorated with many ribbons for his service in 2 wars. He was accompanied by 3 men, 1 in military uniform and 2 in simple black suits. Everyone stood at attention. "Sit down," said the general, placing his briefcase on the table in front of him. Everyone sat down and General Allen pulled out a folder from his briefcase before passing the papers around the room. "Of course, what I am about to tell you must not leave this room. Is it clear?" "That's right, sir," everyone answered in unison. "I met with Vice President Johnson late yesterday evening, and he specifically requested your detachment for this mission, Colonel Tyson," the general said. "Mission, sir?" asked Jim. "What about the president? Does he know about this?" "Of course he does, Colonel. But now he is not in a position to deal with this issue. Let me bring you up to speed. This information has not yet been published, and if everything goes according to plan, it will not be. The last thing we want is to cause panic. The visitors somehow managed to take control of our communications satellites. They called themselves KH-Kitty," said the general. "Whoa, General?" Jim asked. "No, Colonel. H-Kai," General Allen corrected Jim. "So they have already made contact," Jim continued. "Yes, Colonel, we have entered," confirmed the general. "Any idea what they want, sir?" asked Jim. General Allen looked around the room with displeasure and motioned to one of the men in a dark suit. "They want to take away half of all women of childbearing age," the man said, which caused chuckles from the officers, which then quickly died down when the meaning of his words dawned on everyone. Seriously? Mike asked. Maybe he could offer them Rhonda, he thought grimly. This would save on child support, and he would almost certainly get custody of Lisa. Yes, Major, answered the man in the suit. They provided a list of requirements, blood types, genetic markers, and the like. But in the end, it will still amount to millions of women. What is this? Does Mars need women? One of the officers exclaimed in bewilderment. Can their ship carry that many passengers between planets? Just how big is this spaceship? Asked another. Mike heard the married officer sitting next to him mutter, "It must be huge to carry millions of women and their luggage." Nothing has been said about luggage, and we have 96 hours to respond, General Allen intervened. Almost 12 hours have already passed. And if we refuse? Asked Jim. They say they are sterilizing all living creatures on the planet, answered the man in the suit. Is that what they say? Jim asked incredulously. We're not going to test this, Colonel, said the man in the suit. And you? Jim looked uncomfortable with this answer. We decided to give an answer, but not the one they expect, said the general. We have to assume that their ship has some kind of defensive weapons. This rules out a direct attack with one of our new Titan Roman II Ike-bombs, as they would have no way to evade the defense systems. Although a massive salvo of our entire current missile arsenal is one of the backup plans. He took a deep breath before continuing. This is where your squad comes in, Colonel. General Allen turned to Jim. We are returning the X-67C from reserve storage. The X-67C was a beefed-up version of the X-15, designed to enter orbit after being launched from a modified B-52 bomber. It at least has the potential to evade defensive weapons, and it is maneuverable in space. But, sir, this machine was only launched twice, Jim objected. Yes, it is, and the only person who ever piloted it is here now, General Allen said, looking at Mike. The X-67 was designed for space travel, wasn't it, Major? Yes, sir, Mike confirmed, but it was never raised above 60 miles. And now he will rise much higher, with a small package. In a package? Jim asked. Yes, the Mark 59 device will be delivered this afternoon. It is already installed inside the rocket that will be launched using the X-67, the general explained. Mike and Jim looked at each other, shocked. The Mark 59 was considered the most powerful nuclear bomb on the planet, with a maximum yield of approximately 200 megatons. I understand that the X-67 is equipped with a missile system, Colonel, General Allen said. Right? Yes, sir, it is. But we've never launched anything from it. This is one of many systems that have never been fully tested. She will now be tested, Colonel. Yes, Major, what is it? The general asked, looking at Mike. Sir, there's another problem, Mike said. And what is this? Minor problem with re-entry. I don't want to talk bad about the dead, but I really don't want to end up like John Glenn, Mike said. Glenn, the first American to fly into orbit on the Mercury Friendship 7 spacecraft, encountered problems with the craft. It burned up in the atmosphere upon re-entry, setting back the manned flight program by several years. I understand your feelings, Major, and I can't blame you, General Allen said. I understand that the X-67 is equipped with thermal insulation tiles designed to protect the vehicle during re-entry. Yes, sir, it is, Mike confirmed. But they've never been really tested, and— So what, Major? Asked the general. I was never trained for orbital re-entry, sir. The general nodded, considering Mike's words. I appreciate your frankness. That's why I invited Deke Slayton. You've probably heard of him. He was one of the original Mercury astronauts. I asked him to draw up a flight plan. He will work with you in the simulator to prepare you, the general said. I hope you're ready for a few sleepless nights, Major, Dick said. We have a lot of time to spend together. Mike looked at Jim, then at Dick and the general. Is there a problem, Major? Asked General Allen. No, sir. I need to pick up some things from the house, Mike replied. Take enough things with you for 4 days, Major. Until the completion of this mission, you will remain at the base, the general said. I have an appointment in Lancaster on Monday, sir, Mike said. I would like to receive permission to attend this meeting. Jim looked at Mike with raised eyebrows. What kind of meeting is this? Asked General Allen. It's a private matter, sir, Mike replied. No, Major. National security comes first, and I don't want to risk your health. I'm afraid you'll have to reschedule the meeting, the general replied. Understood, sir, Mike responded. Okay, gentlemen. Forward. Time doesn't wait, said the general, standing up. This signaled the end of the meeting, and everyone stood with the general. At ease, said General Allen, leaving the room. I'll see you in the briefing room once you're settled in, Major, Dick said before leaving. I'll be there, Mike said. Jim grabbed Mike's shoulder. What meeting are you having in Lancaster? Jim asked when everyone else had left. I'm going to see a lawyer, Mike answered. What? Jim was surprised. For what? It is a lawyer who is approached for a divorce, Mike explained. Divorce? Are you crazy? Do you realize what this will do to Rhonda? Or with Lisa? Think about your little girl, Jim exclaimed. Is she really my little girl? Mike asked. Is it true? Of course it's yours, Jim replied. She adores you, and this will destroy her. And Rhonda. Mike carefully studied Jim's face, trying to find similarities between his friend and his daughter. The problem was that Jim and Mike were so similar that they could easily be mistaken for brothers. To make matters worse, standard blood tests wouldn't provide much information since Mike's blood was type A positive, and Rhonda's is B negative. Theoretically, Lisa could have almost any blood type. If only there was a reliable way to prove paternity, Mike thought sadly. And I adore her too, Mike said, which was true. I don't think it matters now. You heard the general. I won't be able to do anything until this mission is over. No, you can't, Jim said. You should use these few days to calm down and think things over. I wouldn't want you to ruin your career because of a divorce. Perhaps you're right. Maybe I should rethink this, Mike said, trying to confuse Jim, at least for now. But I won't let you make a fool of me. Of course not, Jim said, not entirely sure Mike would drop the question. Anyway, I need to go. I have to pack my things and say goodbye to Lisa, Mike said. With your permission, sir. Jim nodded, releasing Mike's shoulder. Of course, Jim said. As Jim watched Mike leave, he wondered how much Mike actually knew. How long are you leaving this time? Rhonda asked as Mike gathered his things. For a few days, he answered, without looking at his unfaithful wife. I'll call you when I can. I'll be very busy, but I'll try to call before Lisa goes to bed. Please call. She misses you when you're gone. I miss her too, Mike answered sadly. And for me, do you miss me? Rhonda asked. Mike stopped to look at her. Part of him wanted to lash out at her, but the rational part decided this wasn't the right time. You know that I miss you. I'm just wondering if you miss me, he said. Don't be stupid, Mike. Of course I miss you. And I love you, Rhonda replied. Is it true? Mike asked. Yes, it's true. I know I've been a bitch lately, and I apologize for that. But I really love you. I'm glad to hear that, Mike said as he finished packing. Yeah, you really have been a little bitchy lately. And I accept your apology. Not that it will change anything. He closed the suitcases and carried them downstairs, where Lisa was waiting for him, clutching a tattered teddy bear. It was her favorite teddy bear, a gift that Mike had given her several years ago when he returned from a business trip. He put the suitcases on the floor and took her in his arms. Dad, how long are you leaving for? Asked Lisa. Not for long, little angel. Just for a few days, Mike replied. Are you going to catch space aliens? She asked, wiping a tear from her cheek. Mike looked at Rhonda, who shrugged. It was on the news almost all day, she said. Mike nodded and turned to his daughter. I'll try, honey, Mike said. I'm counting on you to look after Mom while I'm gone. Will you do this for me? Yes, Dad, Lisa answered, hugging Mike tightly. That's my girl, Mike said with a smile. And keep the bear nearby, okay? I heard that space aliens are afraid of teddy bears. I'll do so, Dad, said Lisa in her thin voice. Mike kissed his daughter's forehead and hugged her tightly again. I love you, honey, Mike finally said. I love you too, Dad, answered Lisa. Go out into the yard, honey, Rhonda told the girl. Dad must load his things into the car. The girl gave Mike another kiss and ran out into the yard. Mike carried the things to the car and loaded them into the back seat. A man's voice came from the open garage. Hello, neighbor, the man called. Mike turned around and saw Harold Keyes, a lieutenant who lived across the street with his wife Rita. They had recently moved to the area and both seemed friendly and easy to talk to. Mike thought it was a little strange that a married lieutenant with no children was placed in an area that was usually reserved for senior officers, majors, lieutenant colonels, and colonels. But he wasn't a placement specialist, so he didn't attach much importance to it. Harold said he had just been assigned to the base's public affairs department. Mike and Rhonda met the young couple soon after their arrival and invited them over several times for dinner and a friendly game of pinochle. Are you going on a business trip? Harold asked as he saw Mike loading the car. I'll be at the base for a few days. Just another task, Mike replied. Just a task? Harold asked, confused. Yes, Mike answered. What brings you here today? I was just wondering if you had a pipe wrench I could borrow. I have a leak under the sink, and I promised Rita I would fix it, Harold said. Yes, I think I have the right one. Wait, Mike said, walking toward his workbench along the wall of his garage. He opened his toolbox and took out a red pipe wrench. Will this work? Perfect, said Harold. Very grateful. If you need my help, let me know. Mike suddenly had an idea. Actually, Harold, there is something you could do for me, Mike said. Of course, replied Harold. Mike lowered his voice because he didn't know exactly where Rhonda was or if she was listening. I'm going to be away for a few days, and I would really appreciate it if you and Rita could look after the house, Mike said. If you give me your number, I'll call and check the situation, if you don't mind. Not at all, Mike. We'll be happy to look after the house while you're away, Harold said with a smile. Give me a pen, I'll write down the number. Harold took a pen out of his pocket and wrote down his number on a piece of paper that he tore from the notepad. Mike couldn't help but wonder who would carry around a notebook like that. Thank you, Harold. I owe you, Mike said, taking the paper from his neighbor. Please, Mike, Harold said. Well, I better go. Rita really wants to use her sink. See you. Sounds good. Good luck with the sink, Mike said as Harold waved goodbye. Mike headed back into the house and didn't notice Harold nodding to Rita, who was watching their conversation through the window of their house. What did Harold want? Rhonda asked as Mike entered the house. He wanted to borrow a pipe wrench, Mike answered, so I gave him mine. I see, Rhonda said quietly. What's the matter? Mike asked. Nothing, Rhonda answered, but Mike wasn't sure. I just don't like how his wife sometimes flirts by wearing tiny shorts and shirts tied in a knot that show off her bare belly. And I saw the way she looked at you. Mike laughed. Seriously? Are you worried that I might get attracted to her or something? I know what men are like, said Rhonda. She practically threw herself on your neck every time they were here. Well, this is something new, Mike said sarcastically. What is this supposed to mean? Rhonda asked, her irritation clear in her voice. Have you ever seen me succumb to something like this? Someday. No, Rhonda admitted quietly. Right. I never gave in and never will. Can you say the same? Rhonda's head turned sharply, but she didn't answer. Mike chuckled and continued. I'll talk to you later, Rhonda. Goodbye. Wait, Mike, she called when he reached the door. Don't I at least deserve a kiss? If you insist, I suppose, Mike said, giving her a brotherly kiss. Rhonda looked at him, surprised. I'll talk to you later. Bye, Mike said over his shoulder as he walked out the door, leaving Rhonda in the kitchen wondering how much her husband knew or only suspected. He's gone, said the little brunette, sitting at the small table in the front bedroom. Taking notes in her book, she looked through powerful binoculars mounted on a tripod. Have you installed bugs? Yes, everything is ready. I also wiretapped my phone. Just in time, I think she's already calling. The man known to Mike and Rhonda as Harold Keyes replied as he put on his headphones. He started up a large reel-to-reel tape recorder and began listening. Mike checked into the single officer's room and looked around the small room. There was one single bed with the obligatory military blanket, a small table with a basic black telephone, a chair, a chest of drawers with a small black and white TV, and a tiny closet. Mike was relieved that at least he had his own bathroom. He laid out his things, then put on his flight suit and went to the briefing room, where Deke Slayton was already waiting for him in the same suit. Mike saw Dick's name tag and realized that his coach was an Air Force major. This somehow calmed him down a little. "Are you settled?" asked Dick. "Yes, sir," Mike replied. "Fine. Then let's get started. You can call me Dick. We have a lot of work and little time for this," said Dick, taking out a stack of papers. "First, grab a cup of coffee. You'll need it." "Great," Mike said, "and call me Mike." They took their first break after about 2 hours. After a short run to the men's room, Mike heated up his coffee and sat down across from Dick. "Can I ask a question?" Mike asked. "Of course," Dick answered. "You know this device very well. Why don't you fly the X-67 yourself?" Mike asked. "For several reasons, Mike. First, I was written off several years ago due to a heart condition. You know how these doctors are," Mike grinned in response. "Yes, I know," Mike answered. "I stayed at NASA anyway, and they appointed me senior manager of the astronaut office. The second reason is that you know this ship probably better than anyone alive at the moment. Yes, I can teach you how to maneuver in space and return safely, but you know how it feels. No one alive can teach you that," Dick said, but he didn't stop there. "I have a question for you, Mike. Why aren't you in the space program? Sounds like you'd be a great astronaut." "Thanks for the compliment. That means a lot, especially coming from you. I actually applied for the program," Mike said. "It turned out that I'm 2 inches taller. They wanted pilots no taller than 5 feet 11 inches, and I'm 6'1". Dick chuckled and shook his head. "It's some bullshit," he said. "Perhaps this will change one day. If so, come to me." "Thanks again," Mike said. "Of course, provided that I survive this." "Don't think so, Mike," Dick said. "Based on what I've seen, the X-67 is a reliable ship. Durable, sturdy, well-built. Heck, she's probably even better than the Mercury ships. She can really take a lot, that's for sure," Mike said. They spent the next 2 hours discussing Dick's flight plan, discussing possible situations that might arise. Dick then started talking about atmospheric re-entry, an area in which Mike was weak. Mike's stomach dropped as Dick laid out the basic principles. If you enter at too low an angle, you can bounce off the atmosphere like a stone from water. If it's at too steep an angle, you'll burn, Dick said, using his hands to emphasize his words. Mike knew some of these things, but never thought they would apply to him. "The trick is to enter at the right angle and speed," Dick added. "And you have this calculated?" Mike asked. Dick nodded, taking out another piece of paper. Mike looked at him, surprised that he had such a narrow window to maneuver. They discussed the procedure until Dick realized that Mike was already on the verge of overload. "Listen, Mike, it's almost 18:30. Why don't we finish for today? Go eat, call home, then spend the night studying what I gave you. Tomorrow morning, we will start on the simulator. Let's say 6 a.m. Dick suggested. "Sounds like a plan," Mike agreed. They shook hands and Mike left the room with a full notebook, his head spinning. Mike returned to his room after a hearty dinner in the dining room. He was exhausted both physically and mentally, but he still had a lot to do. After looking at the time, he decided to call home to say goodnight to his daughter. "Hey, Rhonda," Mike said when his wife answered the phone. "I would like to talk to Lisa, if possible." "Of course you can talk to her, Mike," Rhonda said. "She's your daughter." Mike was too tired to respond with sarcasm, so he simply ignored her remark. A few moments later, he heard the sweet voice of his little angel. "Dad, I miss you so much. Please come home." Lisa begged. I would love to, honey, but I have a lot of work to do right now, Mike said. I just called to say that I love you and miss you very much. I love you too, Dad, said Lisa. And the bear loves you too. Mike grinned. Tell the bear that I love him too, Mike said. Absolutely, Dad. Mom says I need to go to bed. I love you, Dad. Please come back soon. Me too, I'll be back, honey. I love you too, Mike said, wiping a tear from his eye. He heard Rhonda answer the phone, and she spoke again. She really misses you, Mike, Rhonda said. I miss her too, Mike answered quietly. Look, Mike, I know we've been having problems lately. Yes, that's true, Mike agreed. I'm serious, Mike. I really love you, and I miss you too. I miss the woman I married, Mike told her. After this work, we need to talk. I agree, Rhonda replied. Mike noticed that there was almost no emotion in her voice. Take care of yourself. I always do this, Mike said. I'll talk to you later. I have a lot to do today. Okay, Mike, Rhonda said. Good night. I love you. Yes, Mike answered. You say so. Good night, Rhonda. Mike ended the call, wondering if she had noticed that he didn't reciprocate her feelings. Her seeming lack of emotion was unsettling. Exhausted, he turned on the TV, hoping to catch the latest news. As he adjusted his rabbit ear antennas and turned the channel knob to better pick up the signal, he saw a black and white image of Walter Cronkite. Earlier today, President Kennedy was interviewed by reporters at Parkland Medical Center in Dallas, Texas, where he is recovering from an assassination attempt on his life yesterday, Cronkite said. The scene changed, and Mike saw the president sitting in a wheelchair, wearing a robe with the presidential seal on the chest. His ear was covered with a white bandage. Thank you everyone for coming so quickly, the president began in his characteristic accent. First of all, I would like to thank the wonderful people here at Parkland Medical Center for providing me with the care I needed. I was told that everything could have been much worse, he added with a slight smile, causing chuckles from the journalists. Rest assured, I will be back to work soon. I know you're all worried about the spaceship that's currently in orbit over Washington. I am fully briefed on the situation and pleased with the calm leadership shown by Vice President Johnson and members of the cabinet. I also spoke with the Soviet premier, who assured me that he was as puzzled by this as we were. Kennedy paused to answer a question from one of the journalists. Mr. President, are you saying that this is not a Soviet spacecraft? At the moment, that's exactly what I'm saying, the president replied. What message would you like to convey to the American people, Mr. President? Asked another journalist. The American people can rest assured that we are doing everything we can to keep everyone safe and protected, not just in the United States, but around the world. Does this include military action, Mr. President? Asked the third journalist. Nothing is ruled out, but I have no desire to start an interstellar conflict, if that's what you're asking, the president replied. In the meantime, I ask everyone to remain calm and continue with their daily activities as usual. A man in medical clothing approached the microphone. That's all for today, he said. Thank you for your patience. An orderly in a dark suit and sunglasses rolled the president away from the microphone, while other people in dark suits took their positions around the wheelchair. The scene changed back to Cronkite. It was President Kennedy in his first public appearance since yesterday's assassination attempt. As you heard, the president stated that while he does not want to provoke an interstellar conflict, the possibility of military action against an alien spacecraft cannot be ruled out. In related news, State and Defense Department officials said they are exploring a wide range of options, but have not yet reached a consensus. There have been no reports of any communication with the ship, leaving officials in the dark about the visitor's intentions. Stay connected with CBS News for the latest updates. The news ended and Mike turned off the TV as the program switched to a short documentary about Kennedy's World War II service as commander of the patrol torpedo boat PT-109. The film also chronicled his leadership during the Cuban Missile Crisis and the successful operation that led to the overthrow of the communist regime in Havana. Only a few words were said about the disastrous Bay of Pigs invasion in 1961. However, the documentary showed Kennedy's apology, in which he stated that the administration intended to learn lessons from this incident. Mike had no doubt that some future version of this documentary would portray Kennedy as the president who saved the world from an alien invasion, provided everything goes according to plan. He was surprised that the aliens' demands had not yet been leaked to the press. If this ever happened, there would be a panic that he couldn't even imagine. Mike took out a note with Harold's number and decided to call his neighbor. "The Keys residence," Harold said when he answered the phone. "Harold, this is Mike Barnes." "Hello, neighbor. How are you?" asked Harold. "Not bad. Just got back to my place. I watched the latest newscast. Do you have anything new?" "Well, Mike, someone just stopped by your garage. The door is closing, so it looks like whoever it is going to be there for a while," Harold said. "What car is this?" Mike asked. "Looks like a Chevrolet sedan. Maybe 1957 or 1958. Two-color, red and white," Mike clarified. "Yes, that's her. Do you know who this is?" asked Harold. "Yes," Mike answered quietly. "Former friend." "Jim Tyson?" asked Harold. "Yes," Mike hissed, wondering how Harold could know this. "Got it," Harold said quietly. "Listen, Mike, don't do anything rash. Things are not always as they seem. You have a lot on your plate right now, including your precious little girl. Don't worry about anything. Rita and I will look after everything." Mike noticed Harold's tone change, and he wondered how much his neighbor actually knew. He clearly did not look like an office worker or a clerk. "Thanks, Harold," Mike said. "I appreciate it." "You're welcome, Major," Harold replied. "Call me tomorrow, okay?" "Yeah, I'll do that," Mike said. "Oh, by the way, that wrench worked great," Harold exclaimed, sounding again like the young man Mike knew. "Thanks for borrowing it." "Glad it was useful to you, Harold. It's time for me to go. Say hi to Rita for me." "I'll tell you, neighbor," Harold said before they ended the conversation. Mike hung up and thought about his options. He couldn't believe that Jim and Rhonda could be so brazen in their affair. The two people closest to him betrayed him in front of the entire neighborhood. Part of Mike wanted to go home and kick some ass, but he knew that would only lead to jail. Well, if he was the only one who could complete the task, and probably had no intention of returning. He counted to 10 and then took a few deep breaths to compose himself. He didn't want Lisa to wake up from screams and see him beating someone. He picked up the phone again, noticing that his hand was shaking, and dialed his home phone number. "The Barnes residence," Rhonda replied with a giggle. Giggle. Mike couldn't remember the last time he heard his wife giggle. Stunned, Mike couldn't say a word, he just listened. "Hello? Hello? Who is this?" Rhonda asked. Mike then heard Jim's voice in the background. "Who is it, baby? Baby? What the hell?" Mike felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. "I don't know, honey. Maybe we got the wrong number," Rhonda replied. "Cute. This is too much," Mike thought, hanging up and ending the call. If he missed the nuclear bomb, he could take Rhonda, tie her up like a turkey, and ask the aliens to take her to pay off the debt, he thought. Gathering his courage, Mike took the notepad out of his flight suit and picked up the phone again, dialing Jim's home number. "Tyson residence. Janice is listening." "Hello, Janice. This is Mike Barnes." "Oh, hi, Mike. How are you?" Busy," Mike said. "Is Jim home?" "No, Mike. He's at the base for a few days. He says he has something important. Didn't he tell you?" "I'm at the base now, and he's not here," Mike said. "Maybe he's at the officers' club or something," Janice suggested. "No, Janice, he's not there," Mike said. There was silence on the other end of the line for a few moments, and Mike thought he heard Janice crying. "You know where he is, don't you?" Janice asked. "Yes, I know, Janice, and I'm really sorry. It's not your fault. He could never remain faithful." "Then why are you staying with him, Janice?" Mike asked. "I know it sounds crazy, but he's a good father, and I have to think about the children." "But that's all. I can't take it anymore," Janice said through tears. "Just do me a favor, please." "Of course, Janice. Which? Give me the first chance to deal with him, okay?" I'll try, Mike said quietly. Thank you. Keep in touch, okay? Of course, Janice, Mike said. If you need anything, let me know. Absolutely, Mike, Janice told him. They said goodbye and ended the conversation. Mike collected his thoughts and tried to concentrate on his work. It was difficult, but he succeeded. Ouch. It looks like it's going to be a hot time for the Barnes family tonight, said the man Mike knew as Harold, sitting next to him. Would you like to listen? Of course, the woman Mike knew as Rita said, taking the headphones from Harold. Oh God, it's so big. Take me with it, lover, Rita heard Rhonda moan. Rita listened to Rhonda and Jim copulate like animals and felt herself getting turned on. Watching Rita blush, Harold smiled. Makes me think, doesn't it? Asked Harold. Yes, Rita moaned, taking off her shirt and bra. They'll be busy for a while, Harold said, enjoying the view of her soft, round curves. Do you want to take a break? Rita smiled and took off her shorts. She threw them across the room and took off her panties. Maybe later, Rita teased. I think I'll just listen in case they say something incriminating. But you can enjoy your snack while I listen, she added. Yes, ma'am, Harold replied with a wide smile. He knew what she wanted and was more than happy to grant her wishes. It was just wonderful, lover, Rhonda moaned, lying in Jim's arms. I needed this so much. Me too, Jim replied. Feeling her mood change, he looked at Rhonda. What are you thinking about? I think Mike knows everything, she said quietly. Jim took a deep breath and let it out loudly. I was afraid of this. How did this happen? He asked. He overheard me talking to you, Rhonda replied. That's why he was in that mood, Jim said. He seemed more than a little upset today. And he said he had an appointment in Lancaster on Monday. He was going to see a lawyer. Were you going to? Rhonda asked. Yes. Other matters turned out to be more important, so he will not go to Lancaster on Monday. Oh God. I don't want a divorce, Rhonda said. That would be so humiliating. But I know he won't tolerate what we do. Jim thought, staring at the ceiling. No, he won't tolerate it, and I have a lot to lose if he files for divorce, Jim added. What, for example? I'm Mike's commander. If he calls my name, which I'm sure he will, it could easily ruin my career. I might even end up in jail. In prison, Rhonda asked in shock. How? Article 134 of the U.S. Criminal Code. The military doesn't approve of what we're doing now. Not only will my career be ruined, but I will probably also be left without a wife. Do you know how close I am to my first star? So what should we do? Maybe you won't have to worry about divorce, Jim said. Rhonda sat up and looked at him in shock. What do you mean? Are you going to kill him? No, at least not immediately and not directly. But this mission he is preparing for is extremely dangerous. Perhaps I can increase the likelihood that he will not return. Jim's words stunned her. Is he really willing to put Mike's life at risk to save his career? What kind of person is he? And what else is he willing to do? He's faced danger more than once, you know. Yes, I know. He faces danger every time he boards the latest test plane. Besides, I flew with him in Korea, remember? Asked Jim. Yes, I remember. But I don't want him to die. It would destroy Lisa, Rhonda said in shock. She is still young. She'll get over it in time, Jim replied casually, and you'll get his insurance. I think he's still covered under the old Korean War military insurance program. 10,000 is not so little. Plus, he will be considered a hero. You could probably make a small fortune just by being the widow of the man who saved the planet. I'm not sure, Rhonda replied, a little puzzled by Jim's offhand remark about the man who saved the planet. I don't even want to think what this will do to Lisa. Look, don't worry about it. Let me take care of Mike, okay? I'll talk to him tomorrow and let him know that divorce is not beneficial for him, at least from a financial point of view. If I can't convince him, then we'll consider Plan B. In the meantime, keep an eye on Lisa. Of course, Jim, Rhonda said, her mind filled with thoughts that Mike might be dead, or that he was now trying to save the planet while she lay in bed with the man her husband called a friend. For the first time since she started dating Jim, she truly began to regret her decision. Neither of them noticed the tiny microphone in the vent that was broadcasting their conversation to the house across the street. The next morning, Mike woke up, showered, shaved, got dressed, and went to the dining room, where he ate an omelet and drank a cup of coffee. Carrying the heavy folder that Dick had given him the day before, he went to the gym, where Dick was already waiting for him. "Good morning, Mike. Glad you made it. How are you feeling?" "You don't look very rested," Dick said. "I'm a little tired." "I didn't sleep much last night," Mike answered. Dick looked at him with concern. "Is something going on? Anything that might distract you from your mission?" "Just a depraved wife cheating on me with a man I considered a friend," Mike thought. "Personal problems," Mike answered. "Well, you need to forget about all this and focus on the task, Mike," Dick said. "Can you?" "Yes, Dick, I can handle it," Mike said. "Great. I think the doctor can give you something to help you sleep if needed. Did you read everything I gave you yesterday? Any questions?" "Yes, I read it. I was busy with this until almost midnight." "Let's check what you remember," Dick said with a smile. "Come on, get into the simulator. Once you're settled in, I'll take you through an orbital navigation course." Mike put on everything as if for a real flight and secured himself in the simulator. Dick nodded approvingly as he inspected Mike's suit. "Great job, Mike. Remember, once you leave the Earth's atmosphere, your control surfaces will be useless. This means no rudder, no flaps, nothing. You will make all maneuvers and course changes using controlled jet engines, like the reaction control system on the X-15. Do you understand everything?" "For now, yes. I know this, but I haven't used them much." "But you used them, right?" asked Dick. "Yes, I did," Mike answered. "So you know that the slightest action will lead to change." "Yes, I know that," Mike said. "Great. And you also know that any movement will continue until you neutralize it or change it, right?" Dick noticed that Mike nodded impatiently. "Most of your flight will be programmed in advance, so you won't have to do much. But unforeseen situations can happen at the top. Therefore, I want you to follow the flight programs that I have already established. Along the way, I can introduce malfunctions. Do you understand me?" "I think yes." "Fine. Then let's begin," said Dick. "And good luck." Mike spent the next 3 hours going through the flight program. As promised, Dick introduced glitches to see how Mike would react. Mike dealt with most of the problems, but died a couple of times when the ship got out of control and collapsed. "Damn," Mike said as Dick's smiling face appeared through the hatch. "Don't be upset, Mike. If I had a nickel for every time I died in these things, I would have retired a rich man by now," Dick said, laughing. "Look, why don't we take a break? Shall we be back in, say, 30 minutes? "Sounds good," Mike replied. "I need to go to the toilet, and I want to make a call." "Let's. See you in half an hour." Mike climbed out of the simulator and took off his bulky flight suit. After he was free, he called Harold. "Hello, neighbor," Harold said when he answered the phone. "What's new?" Mike asked worriedly, hoping Jim wasn't staying over at Rhonda's. "Your wife's guest is staying the night, Major." "I don't think he played with dolls with your daughter all night. He left about 7 in the morning," Harold said. "I'm sorry." "Yes, me too, Harold," Mike said, his world continuing to crumble. "How long have you known Colonel Tyson?" asked Harold. "He was my flight instructor. I served with him in Korea for about a year. He returned home before me. He was my best man at the wedding, and I was his best man. He was like a brother to me," Mike said. "I'm sorry to hear that," Harold said. "Are you saying he left at 7 in the morning?" "Yes," Harold confirmed. "Any idea where he went?" "He's not here," Mike said. Rita followed him. "I haven't heard anything from her yet," Harold said. Mike was puzzled. Why is Rita following Jim? There was something he didn't like about it. "Listen, Major, I think you should be on your guard." Now Mike was confused. "Harold, what's going on here?" "In fact," Mike asked. "Not on the phone, Major. I know you're limited to the base right now. Just be careful. I'll contact you when I can. What about my daughter? Mike asked. We live right across the street, Major. Don't worry. We won't let anything happen to her, Harold said. I get the feeling you're not really a public affairs officer, Mike said. We'll discuss it later, Major. Just focus on your work. We'll be in touch. You can call later for updates. Oh, and one more thing. What? Expect Colonel Tyson to want to talk to you. Take his words with a grain of salt. Don't react too harshly, and don't give him a reason for revenge. Do you know what I mean? I think so, Mike said. How did you know this? If I tell you, I'll have to kill you, Major, Harold said with dry humor. Mike chuckled. Understood. You're a comedian, right? You're learning now, neighbor, Harold replied in the tone Mike was used to. You better get back to business. We'll be in touch. Thanks, Mike said, hanging up. He shook his head, wondering what would happen next, then returned to the simulator, where he saw Jim talking to Dick. Here he is, Jim announced with a wide smile. Major Slayton says you're doing a good job on your mission. Well done, Mike. Thank you. Sir, Mike replied, trying to remain calm. Listen, Dick, if you don't mind, I'd like to talk to the Major for a couple of minutes, Jim said. Of course, Colonel, Dick answered. Jim smiled, then motioned for Mike to join him in the empty office. The smile disappeared as soon as the door closed. Rhonda thinks you're thinking about divorce, Jim said. That's what usually happens when someone cheats on their spouse, Mike answered. What does this concern you, sir? First of all, I am your commander. Secondly, I've been close to Rhonda for a long time, Jim said, and I care about her well-being. And yours too. But not so much as not to sleep with her, Mike asked. Jim chuckled. Mike, you know that I've always loved women, said Jim. Yes, I know. I covered for you a couple of times, as you may remember. I never thought that you would go after my wife. Let me help you understand what you're up against, Mike. Like a man. First of all, you'll have to pay child support because Rhonda doesn't have a job. Secondly, you will pay for the maintenance of the child. You'll lose almost half your salary on this alone. As a major, do you earn something like $600 a month? And on top of that, you probably won't see Lisa much. Maybe once every couple of weeks, if Rhonda doesn't interfere with seeing you. This girl adores you. It will kill her if she can't be with you. And to add insult to injury, I'll still have Rhonda. What about Janice? And your children? Mike asked. What's wrong with them? I've been keeping Janice in check for years. I take good care of them. If she tries to divorce me, it won't be as good for her as it is for Rhonda. I'll take care of it. You know, I have connections, but that doesn't concern you. Rhonda and Lisa are touching you. So you're saying that I should just close my eyes to everything that happens, let you sleep with my wife and keep quiet. So, Mike asked, is it really that bad, Mike? Damn it, I've been sleeping with your wife since we met. You remember that it was I who introduced you to her. Has Rhonda ever refused you sex? I don't think so. And as far as I can tell, she was a good wife to you and a good mother to Lisa. And that's exactly what I will tell the court. So what if I borrow from time to time? You didn't know this before, so what has changed? You pathetic son of a bitch, Mike hissed. You two denied me the opportunity to have children of my own. I can't think of anything more hateful. What are you talking about? I heard Rhonda say that Lisa is your daughter. This is true, Mike asked. Jim sighed heavily before answering. Rhonda thinks so. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe she's mine. Maybe not. Who cares? Either way, your name is on the birth certificate, and you'll be paying child support. So, what do you say, Mike? Jim asked with a grin. Mike remembered what Harold had told him and mentally counted to 10 before answering. Like a man, Mike asked. Like a man. No ranks, no command. First, I'll drop a nuclear bomb on the aliens, Mike said, and then we'll deal with you like men. Jim's smile disappeared when he saw the look of determination on Mike's face and nodded slowly. What about Rhonda? Who? Mike asked sarcastically. Your wife, Mike. Rhonda. Judging by what you told me, I never had a wife. Just someone who took my last name to get government benefits. I loved her with all my heart, and she spat on me. So as far as I'm concerned, she's dead to me, Mike said. Okay, Mike, if that's what you want. In the meantime, stay away from my house. And away from my daughter. If you want to have a bitch who lives there, you can take her to your home. Or rent a motel. Clear? I see, Jim said, wondering how Mike knew he had spent the night at his house. I understand. Just this. A what? Mike asked angrily. Not a word to the command. Otherwise, there will be consequences, Jim said. That sounds like a threat. Sir, Mike said. Consider it. A promise, Jim said. Mike glanced at his enemy and nodded. He couldn't believe that this was the same man he had served with in Korea. Perhaps his life wouldn't be such a mess if Jim had been shot down all those years ago. Are we done here, sir? Mike asked sharply. Yes, Major. We're done, Jim said. And not only that, Mike thought as Jim left the office, slamming the door. Walking to the nearest phone in his office, Mike picked up the receiver and dialed Harold's number. Hello, neighbor, Harold said when he answered the phone. I think you just talked to the colonel. Yes, I did, Mike said. He just left. Understood. Rita is already there. I'll come to your apartment later in the evening. We need to talk. Yes, it is necessary. He just threatened me. Don't take it to heart, Major, Harold said. And don't worry about anything. We've got your back. Thank you. See you tonight, Mike said, ending the call. Looking around, he noticed a yellow notepad. Taking a pen, he wrote a short letter, folded it, and sealed it in an envelope. Everything is fine? Dick asked as Mike returned to the simulator. Mike noticed that Jim had already left the simulator room. Yes, Mike said. Let's drop a nuclear bomb on these damn aliens. That's the attitude, Dick said, wondering what happened between the two men. Dick, can you do me a favor? If I can. Mike took a sealed envelope from his jacket pocket. If I don't return, can you deliver this letter? Dick was a veteran of wartime air combat and was familiar with such requests. For your wife, I assume. Mike shook his head. No, for the Office of Special Investigations. Shocked, Dick blinked. He was focused on the mission and wanted this person to be focused on the task as well. There was no real replacement. And you're giving me this because it concerns Colonel Tyson. Yes, Mike said. Dick could tell that something was seriously affecting Mike, although he tried not to show it. If I promise to deliver this letter if anything happens, will that help you focus on the mission and nothing else? Yes, it will help. Dick put the letter in his uniform pocket. Consider it done. Now let's go back to the simulator. After Jim left the house in the morning, Rhonda sat on the couch, her thoughts racing in 100 different directions after the conversation yesterday. Until that moment, she had never fully thought about the consequences of what she and Jim had been doing for the last 10 years. It was all supposed to be fun and harmless, and no one was supposed to get hurt. But now Jim sounded crazy, talking about damaging Mike's plane so he couldn't get home. She never even thought that the military could put Jim in prison for having sex with her. How can they do this? After all, he is a war hero and a high-ranking officer. Besides, he is a commander and will soon become a general. Rhonda mechanically went about her daily household chores, thinking about her husband. Yes, Mike could be rough sometimes, but never without good reason, and he always treated her and Lisa with warmth and love. At least until recently, when he overheard her conversation with Jim. Now she faced the real possibility of divorce. What will she do? Where will she go? How will she take care of Lisa? She has no skills, no money, nothing. Her parents are retired, and she has no other family. And deep down, she knew that Jim would eventually tire of her. She couldn't spend the rest of her life as the general's mistress. Then what? She collapsed on the sofa, sobbing. What have I done? Rhonda sobbed. She felt a small hand rest on her shoulder and looked into the face of her beautiful daughter. Everything will be fine, Mommy. Daddy will take care of everything, Lisa said in her sweet voice. Rhonda cried even harder, hugging Lisa tighter, knowing deep down that Mike would truly take care of everything. Just not the way she wanted. After spending more than 8 grueling hours in the simulator, Mike was mentally and physically exhausted. He grabbed a snack in the mess hall and then headed to his quarters on base, where he planned to sleep for a couple of hours before calling his daughter. He was awakened by a loud knock on the door. Opening it, he saw Harold holding a brown paper bag. "Hey, neighbor," Harold said cheerfully, pulling out a bottle of soda from a six-pack in a bag. "Hey, Harold," Mike replied, rubbing his eyes, shaking off the sleep. "Soda? Seriously? I would bring something stronger, but I know you have a mission soon. Besides, I know you love drinking this, so I thought I'd brighten up your day. Can I come in? I have news for you." "Well, come in," Mike said, wondering how much Harold knew. "I hope you have something to open this up." Harold smiled, pulling the bottle opener out of his pocket. "I never leave home without my trusty church key," Harold said, smiling. Mike grinned for the first time in a long time and took the bottle opener. He opened his bottle and took a long sip of the cold drink. "So, what's your news?" Mike asked, pointing Harold to a chair. "First, I need to confess something," Harold said. "Don't talk. Let me guess," Mike replied. "You're not actually Lieutenant Harold Keyes from Public Affairs, are you?" "Guilty, Major," Harold confirmed, confirming Mike's growing suspicions. "So who are you really, and who do you work for? Axis? FBI? CIA? Everything has its time, Major," Harold said mysteriously. "Can you at least tell me whether I should salute you or you should salute me?" Mike asked. "It doesn't matter now, Major," said Harold. "The important thing is that you complete your mission and return home safe and sound." "How do you know about my mission?" Mike was surprised. "Enough to understand that the lives of millions of people depend on it," said Harold. "My attention is now focused on your commander, Colonel Tyson. He's still a specimen." "Instance is not the word that comes to mind," Mike answered bitterly. "You know he's on the list of candidates for the rank of Brigadier General, right?" "Yes, I heard." "Well, it seems his extramarital activities have attracted the attention of some powerful people, and they are not very happy." "I'm not the only one," Mike hissed. "No, I'm sure I'm not alone." "Is he being blackmailed?" Mike asked. "That's one reason for concern," Harold said. "You know the communists love to target guys like him with honey traps." "Are you saying that Rhonda works for the communists?" Mike was stunned. "No, we don't think so. But she can be considered an accomplice after the crime has been committed." "Accomplice? What?" "Sabotaged, Major, and perhaps espionage." This caught Mike's attention. "What do you mean by sabotage?" Mike asked. "Sabotage of the X-67C, Major," Harold said. "Not so strong as to prevent you from completing your mission, but enough to prevent you from returning home alive." "How do you know this?" Mike asked. "We eavesdropped on your house and connected all the wires a few days ago, Major. We also tapped your home phone. Sorry for this deception, but it was necessary. We heard how he planned it." "Are you saying that the man I've known all these years is trying to kill me? Why? Why do people do half the stupid things they do, Major? In the case of Tyson, he wants to have everything at once and more on top. He knows you won't stand for what he and Rhonda did, so he wants to make sure you can't stop him." "You're talking about murder, Harold," Mike said. Harold nodded in agreement. "And Rhonda agrees with this?" "As far as I understand from the wiretapping, no. But she didn't tell anyone about it, so at least she's an accomplice after the fact." "What will happen to her?" Mike asked. "This is not my decision. She'll probably go to jail for a while," Harold replied. Mike thought this development might allow him to gain custody of Lisa. But what will he do as a single father in the Air Force if his ex-wife is behind bars? "Have you already arrested Tyson?" "Not yet. We want to give him enough rope to hang himself and maybe find out if he's working with someone. Don't worry, we'll get him." "What about the X-67? Mike asked. "Tyson has already done everything. We have spoken to the technicians, and they are thoroughly inspecting the ship. They know they have to be as secretive as possible. I'll check with the crew chief tomorrow morning. Maybe I should call Rhonda and convince her to do the right thing, Mike said. She's not home today, Harold said slowly, looking into Mike's eyes. Tyson picked her up early and they spent the night at a motel off base. What about Lisa? Asked Mike, concerned. Rhonda asked Rita if Lisa could stay with us for the night, Harold said. We told Rhonda she could stay if she wanted. So your daughter is with us today? Harold noticed the painful expression on Mike's face. You're not sure that Lisa is really your daughter, are you? No, I'm not sure, Mike said. I wish I could somehow confirm this. Actually, it's possible, said Harold. What? Mike asked, surprised. How? Genetic testing and comparison. Technically, it's still considered experimental, but we've had very good results. Genetics don't lie. We only need 2 samples, and we will know for sure. Interested? Of course, Mike said. What should I do? Harold took a small test tube from his jacket pocket and pulled out a long cotton swab. Just let me take a sample from the inside of your cheek. We'll do the same with Lisa, then send the samples for analysis. We should know something within a few days at most, Harold said. Let's do this, Mike said. He allowed Harold to take a sample from the inside of his cheek. He then returned the swab and signed the outside of the tube. I'll get a sample from Lisa this evening and send them off. And is it reliable? Mike asked. Absolutely, Gar confirmed fine. Thanks, Harold. Or whatever your real name is, Mike said. Harold laughed. Harold will do for now, neighbor. Well, I have to go, otherwise Rita will blow my head off. If you want, you can call home and talk to your daughter. I will do so, Harold. And thanks again, Mike said as Harold left. Closing the door behind him, Mike took the phone and dialed the Keys house number. Rita answered after the second ring. Good evening, Rita. This is Mike Barnes. Can I talk to my daughter, please? Good evening, Mike. I think you've already talked to Harold, Rita said. Yes, I did, and I want to talk to my daughter. Of course, Mike. Here she is. Mike heard Rita hand the phone to his little girl. He smiled, listening to her gentle voice. Dad, are you okay? Asked Lisa. Yes, dear, I'm fine. How are you doing? I miss you, Daddy. Mom left with Uncle Jim and said she would be gone until the morning. Lisa always called Tyson Uncle Jim. Previously, this would have made him smile, but now it only disgusted him. I heard that too. Are you having a good time at the Keys? Yes, Rita and I played cards, and I won, said Lisa. You look like you're having a great time, Mike said. Yes, Rita is fun. Dad, why is Mom so sad? I don't know, dear. Did she say something? Today she cried and said that she didn't know what to do, Lisa answered. Mike knew what was going on, but he didn't want to upset his little girl. Maybe when I get home I can talk to her, Mike said. I hope so, Dad. I don't like it when Mom cries. Me too, honey, Mike replied. They talked a little more, then said goodbye, and Mike thanked Rita for looking after his daughter. It makes me happy, Mike. And don't worry about those we talked about. We have eyes and ears on them, even now, Rita said. Who are my neighbors? Mike was surprised. Thank you, Rita. I really appreciate it, Mike said, ending the call. Are you okay, Rhonda? Jim asked as they lay in the motel bed. You're not like that today. I think we need to stop before it's too late, Rhonda said quietly. Are you overcome by doubts? Asked Jim. We only have to hold out for a little over a day. So you really did it. Did you sabotage Mike's plane? Yes, I did that before I picked you up. Well, what will happen now? Rhonda asked, afraid of the answer, but feeling that she had to admit her guilt. Let's just say Mike will go out in a blaze of glory. Don't worry, he won't suffer. Much. Maybe he'll get a little hot, Jim said. What do you mean? She asked anxiously. I sabotaged his retro engines, the rockets he will need to return to Earth. He will complete the mission, but he will not be able to return home, Jim said calmly. What? Rhonda screamed, suddenly afraid of the reality of murder of her husband. This scared Jim, who quickly calmed her down. The cries of passion in the motel did not bother anyone, but hysteria could attract unwanted attention. What can I say? Mike is the kind of person who would go on a suicide mission if it meant saving the world. Damn hero. Heck, they'll name schools and parks after him. Shocked to the core, Rhonda looked at Jim with horror. Seeing her reaction, he tried to calm her down. Isn't that what you wanted? For Mike to disappear from your life without unnecessary red tape with a divorce? She gasped. I said I don't want him to die, she hissed. Well, you can't have everything at once, Jim answered calmly. Just stay strong for another day or two. Then everything will be over. How can you be so calm about killing the man you served with for so many years, the man who called you his friend? Jim grinned. This is part of the preparation. As a woman, you won't understand. How many times did he save your life in Korea? Rhonda asked. A couple of times, Jim answered, and I saved his skin a couple of times. So we're even. This is what happens in war. You do what you need to do to complete the task. Even if it means killing a person whose wife do you have? The man who considered you his brother and best friend? No need for sentimentality, Rhonda. This doesn't suit you. When it's all over, you'll have everything you wanted. You will be free from Mike, you will have money, and you and Lisa can go anywhere. And you? Yes, you will be with me. I'll take care of you and Lisa. Don't worry. She looked into the distance for a long time. Her face was a mask of contradictions. Then, gathering herself, she reluctantly approached Jim. I hope you're right, Rhonda said seriously. Tears welled up in her eyes as she thought about her husband, who didn't deserve what was about to happen. Sorry, Mike, she thought to herself. Meanwhile, two men sitting in a van across from the motel were taking notes as they listened to the conversation, which was picked up by an ultra-sensitive parabolic microphone attached to the room's window and recorded on a large reel-to-reel tape recorder. Well, Sergeant, what did you find? The colonel asked early the next day as he approached the X-67, now attached to the wing of a specially modified B-52 bomber. Here it is, sir, the Air Force sergeant responded, clutching something in his closed fist. The colonel extended his hand and examined the components that the sergeant handed him. What is this? Asked the colonel. Retro device control modules, sir, replied the sergeant. Seeing the confusion on the colonel's face, the sergeant shook his head, cursing to himself, Damn Army officers. He took a deep breath and continued, These modules control the rockets that allow 67 to slow down enough to enter the Earth's atmosphere, sir. Look at the contacts below. You will see that some of them are circumcised, sir. Circumcised? Asked the colonel. Yes, sir. Deliberately. I replaced the modules and completely checked all systems. Everything is within normal limits now, sir, said the sergeant. Did you tell anyone about this? No, sir. I did everything as you ordered last night, Colonel. Who was the last person to touch this ship before you? It was Colonel Tyson, sir, and yes, he has the competence to do something like that. The colonel nodded, considering the sergeant's words. Are you sure these contacts weren't cut off before the ship was brought to us? Asked the colonel, already knowing the answer. Absolutely sure, sir, the sergeant replied. The ship was checked yesterday after refueling, and when we did a full recheck today, there was a slight drop in voltage on the retro missile circuits A and B. This is due to the fact that the modified contacts were not performing their functions, sir. We pulled out the modules, and this is the reason. The disgust on the sergeant's face left no doubt about the colonel's thoughts. I see, said the colonel. Looking at the sergeant's badge and name patch, he said, Staff Sergeant Newton, are you the crew chief? Yes, sir. And no one will approach this ship without my presence until it taxis for takeoff. Thank you, Staff Sergeant Newton. I appreciate your thoroughness. Good job, son, the colonel said, writing in his notebook. Thank you, Colonel, Newton said. I would like you to increase security around this ship, Sergeant. I don't want anyone else to get close enough to do something like that again. Is it clear? Yes, sir, Newton said. Do I need to tell anyone about this, sir? You already reported, Staff Sergeant. I'll take care of everything myself, said the colonel. Yes, sir, Newton replied. The colonel looked at the massive, unwieldy aircraft and wondered what kind of madman would dare to fly in such a thing. A couple more questions, Sergeant, before I go, the colonel said. Which ones, sir? Asked Newton. First of all, don't say a word about this to anyone. Do you understand? Yes, sir, Newton replied. And secondly, I wasn't here. I understand, sir, Newton replied nervously, wondering who this army colonel really was. Fine. Continue, Sergeant, the colonel said, turning around. Newton watched as he got into his company car and drove away. Making sure that the crew commander did not see him, the colonel stopped the car, opened the compartment, and took out the telephone receiver. He dialed the number and waited for his partner to answer. We caught him red-handed, the colonel said. How is our overnight guest? Everything is fine. I just fed her breakfast, and now she's watching TV. Any news about Mrs. Barnes? No, none. It's still too early. I'll be home soon. See you later, love, the woman on the other end of the line said before they ended the call. Mike finished his breakfast and headed to the training room where he knew Deck was waiting for him. When he arrived, he saw Jim, Deck, and General Allen deep in conversation. Deck noticed Mike first and called out to him. Good morning, Major. You look like you had a good night's sleep. Are you ready for today's activities? Yes, I'm ready, Mike said. We were just discussing the last details of the flight, Jim said. I know you're looking forward to the pre-flight of 67. Yes, sir, I'm waiting, Mike said. Okay, said Jim. General Allen stepped forward. Remember, Major, you must maintain radio silence until the package is delivered. Do you understand what I'm telling you? Yes, General, I understand, Mike said. They didn't want to risk the H-Cully detecting his approach by intercepting radio messages where they shouldn't be, until the nuclear device was detonated. Then, I hope, there won't be any H-Key left to intercept. Why don't you put on a suit and we'll meet at the van, Deck said. Sounds like a plan, Mike said. He went to the locker room, where he changed into a bulky spacesuit. While he was there, he called Tom Hawkins' office to reschedule the meeting. Knowing Mike from previous joint projects, Tom understood the situation and readily rescheduled the meeting without any questions. Mike completed his preparations and met with Deck, Jim, and General Allen at the transport van. You know, Mike, I really envy you. Such a mission, Jim said as they pulled up to 67. Mike chuckled at this. Well, you can fly for me, sir, Mike suggested half-jokingly. I'd love to, Mike, but honestly, you're the best person for the job, Jim said. That's what they say, Mike replied. They reached the 67-52 combination and the van stopped. They got out and walked around the 67, paying particular attention to the design on the nose, the words Little Angel in cursive with a picture of a teddy bear. Named after someone special, asked General Allen. I told my daughter that aliens are afraid of teddy bears, sir, Mike said with a smile. General Allen laughed. Little Angel is the Major's nickname for his daughter, Lisa, Jim replied. The General nodded in understanding. You must love your little girl very much, Major, the General said. Most of all on St. Hay, sir, Mike said, looking straight at Jim. You'll be home with her soon, Major, General Allen said with a smile. Why don't you do some pre-flight training and get ready? Mike took the clipboard from Sergeant Newton and studied the papers for X-67. Is this a good plane, Sergeant? He's as ready as ever, sir, Sergeant Newton replied, his voice thick with emotion. Mike signed the aircraft acceptance form, took his copy and placed it on his tablet under the X-67 checklists. Each one had the word experimental written on it, which added to his confidence. It was like test flights where he had brushes with death several times. I'm ready, he announced, and put everything except flying out of his mind. He completed the external check, climbed the stairs, and entered the X-67's cockpit. Deck followed him. Just follow the mission profile and everything will work out, Mike, Deck said as Sergeant Newton checked Mike's harness and connected his radio wires. I will do so, Deck. Thank you for everything. After a firm handshake, Deck stepped down the stairs, and Mike saw the look on Newton's face. Everything all right, Sergeant? Yes, sir. Everything is perfect. She'll take good care of you. Acknowledged, Mike said. Newton made one final check of the cockpit, then stood back and gave the clearest salute Mike had ever seen. Mike returned the sergeant's salute. Give it to them, sir, Newton shouted. I'll do that, Sergeant. Count on it, shouted Mike back. Newton stepped off the ramp and moved it away from the exhaust area of the B-52 engine. Mike looked down and saw the others salute. He saluted and closed the lantern. A few minutes later, he heard and felt the roar of 8 B-52 engines. The beginning, he thought as he made the final check of the instruments. The large combi plane took its place and finally headed down the runway. Even stripped of excess weight and using water injection and full military power, the overloaded B-52 took off just past the 1,000-foot mark of the remaining runway. The flight deck crew and flight engineer, all SAC veterans, carefully guided the lumbering beast and its X-67 Parasite to the release point. When the B-52 reached 45,000 feet, the aircraft commander coordinated the drop with Mike over the intercom. This ended with a short countdown. At 0, just before Mike felt the release mechanism open, releasing the X-67, the faceless commander said simply, "God help you, Major Barnes." He felt the fall, counted to 3, and turned on the rocket engine ignition switches. Instantly, Mike felt the G-forces pressing him into the specially shaped seat as the rocket engines began firing with controlled violence. He knew the big bomber was going to the left, so as Mike pulled the wheel, he saw the ground beneath him move further out of sight as the ship's rocket engines lifted him higher and higher at great speed. The altimeter and Mach indicator began to increase rapidly. He carefully followed the climb profile, and soon the familiar blue sky disappeared, replaced by the blackness of space. Looking at his altimeter, Mike realized that he had crossed the Kármán line, the boundary of space. Following his flight plan, Mike made the first course correction that would put him in position to launch the nuclear missile. Now the wait won't be long, he thought. With his left hand, he tore the wire seal off the red switch that activated the weapons and delivery system. After a few seconds, the indicator light changed from red to green, ready. The fire control switch, also secured with a seal, was still in the safe position. Mike felt like he was back in Korea. He was a hunter again, but this time a lone hunter. Rita and Lisa were in the living room when they heard a knock on the door. Rita opened the door and saw a somewhat agitated Rhonda Barnes. "Good morning, Mrs. Barnes," Rita said pleasantly. "Come on in." Rhonda came in and was immediately hugged and showered with kisses by her daughter. "Would you like some coffee? I just brewed a fresh one," Rita offered. Yes, that sounds good," Rhonda replied nervously. "Please." "Cream or sugar?" asked Rita. "Both, please," Rhonda replied. "Sit down, I'll be right back," said Rita. Rhonda sat on the couch while Lisa talked about her night at the Keys. A few minutes later, Rita returned, handing Rhonda a cup of hot coffee. "Thank you. This is delicious," Rhonda said after taking her first sip. "Are you okay, Mrs. Barnes?" Rita asked calmly. "You seem a little nervous." "Honestly, yeah, I'm scared," Rhonda admitted. "Because of Mike, you know. I hate it when he does God knows what." "I can't blame you for that, Mrs. Barnes," Rhonda heard Harold's voice behind her. She turned around and saw that Harold was wearing a Green Army Colonel uniform. "What? I'd be a little scared too if I were you," said the man she knew as Harold. He smiled and sat down in the chair opposite the sofa. "I don't understand," Rhonda said. "Why are you wearing that uniform?" Harold looked at Rita, who took Lisa's hand and led her away. Rhonda had a terrible feeling. "I think we need to talk, Mrs. Barnes," Harold said. "About what?" Rhonda asked, her hands starting to shake. "I think you know what I mean, Mrs. Barnes," Harold told her. "Do you know what the punishment for sabotage is?" and for aiding and abetting an enemy of the United States. What about complicity in murder? No, let's just say that right now you risk spending the rest of your life behind bars. And that's the best case scenario, if you know what I mean. Is this what you want? No, Rhonda squeaked, tears streaming down her face. Then help me, Mrs. Barnes. Help me take down Jim Tyson, and I will try to reduce your time in prison as much as possible. Yes, you will still sit down. I can't prevent this, but it doesn't have to be for life. Even though I didn't do anything, Rhonda asked. Didn't you do anything? You knew that Tyson was planning to sabotage your husband's ship. Tyson assured you that sabotage would lead to the death of your husband, and yet you didn't tell anyone about it, not even your husband. So yes, you will be punished for this. Cooperate with me fully, and I will do my best to ensure that you only spend a couple of years in a minimum security facility. What do you want to know? Rhonda asked, sobbing. I want to know everything, Mrs. Barnes. About your relationship with Jim Tyson, about what you two were planning to do with your husband, everything. Was it your idea to kill Mike? Or him? Oh God, no, Creedler Rhonda. It's all Jim. I begged him not to hurt Mike. Please, you have to believe me. Actually, Mrs. Barnes, I believe you, Harold said. Rhonda looked at him with hope in her eyes. So, tell me all about your relationship with Jim Tyson. Harold wrote in a notebook as Rhonda told him her story how she first met Jim in a civilian bar in Southern California during the Korean War, how their relationship developed, how Jim introduced her to Mike Everything. When Rhonda finished, Harold had a clear picture of the ongoing relationship between Rhonda and Jim. It became clear to him that Jim was the one who started this whole mess and Rhonda was just a tool. Will this help you? Rhonda finally asked. Harold nodded, putting the notebook in his pocket. Yes, that helps a lot, Mrs. Barnes. I now have a much clearer picture of Jim Tyson. Thank you. This is a good start. Can I take my daughter and go home now? Rhonda asked desperately. I'm afraid that's not possible yet, Mrs. Barnes, at least until we take Colonel Tyson into custody. Harold snapped his fingers and two large military policemen entered the living room. What is this? Rhonda asked, starting to get nervous. I need you to go with these gentlemen. They will take you to safety. Are you arresting me? Her trembling intensified. I'm afraid so, Mrs. Barnes. You said you would help me, she blurted, tears streaming down her cheeks. And I will help, after we apprehend Tyson. Can I at least say goodbye to my daughter? Rhonda begged. Certainly. Harold turned to the back of the house and called for Rita to come back. Rita came out, leading Lisa with her. Harold turned to the girl. Honey, your mother will be working with us, and she needs to go to a place where she will be safe. Is Mommy in trouble? Lisa asked, sadness written on her face. Harold glanced at Rhonda in surprise as he considered his answer, then turned back to Lisa. I hope not, but she's going to help us catch one very bad man. So why don't you hug and kiss your mom? You'll see her again soon, I promise. With tears in her eyes, Lisa hugged Rhonda and they said goodbye. Oh, I need your house keys, Mrs. Barnes, said Harold. Rhonda silently handed him the keys, then turned to the military police. Let's go, she said reservedly. She hoped that meant Mike would be okay and that she wouldn't have to face him. Jim Tyson stood in the operations center, watching the monitors tracking Mike's progress towards the HTGI ship. According to the trackers, he was already more than halfway to his destiny. Telemetry showed that the X-67C was still performing much better than anyone expected. He was pleased to note that no one noticed the damage he caused to the control modules of the retro devices. Nervous, isn't it? General Allen said as he approached Jim. Yes, sir. The waiting is the hardest, Jim answered. If all goes well, Major Barnes should be able to visually locate the HTGI ship any second now. I don't see how he can miss it, Jim replied. Let's hope the cloaking technology works as well as promised. Yes, sir, said Jim. The general continued his walk around, looking into the consoles of the technicians monitoring the flight. Jim took advantage of his absence to go to the break room, warm up some coffee, and call Rhonda. He dialed Barnes' home phone number, but no one answered. Strange, he thought. Rhonda was always close to the phone. Perplexed, he hung up and dialed again, but there was no answer. Maybe she was stuck with the neighbors, Jim thought as he walked back into the big room. Mike watched the instruments carefully, only briefly glancing out the windows at the blue planet below. So far, Little Angel has worked better than he or anyone else could have expected. It seemed that this ship really belonged to space. Looking at the chronometer, Mike realized that he would soon have to see his target. Looking up, he saw it a huge sphere sitting in the middle of what reminded him of a donut. Although he was still nearly 1,000 miles away, he was struck by the size of the object and wondered if a single Tuzuzer megaton nuclear warhead would be enough. With the speed he was flying, he would be on top of the target in no time, so he began preparing for his bomb run. As planned, the signal clock glowed red, indicating that the time would soon come to launch the nuclear missile. He turned on the head-up display and began searching for a suitable target. He found it in what appeared to be an open compartment on the side of an alien ship. He fixed the sight on the compartment and looked at the countdown. He broke the wire seal, activated the start switch under his thumb, and began counting down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. He pressed a button on his control wheel and saw the rocket take off, rushing towards its target. He wasted no time in launching a flight program that sent the Little Angel in a large arc back toward Edwards Air Force Base. The control engines followed the program, and Mike saw the alien ship disappear from his sight. So far, he remained unnoticed. Knowing that he had only a few seconds before detonation, Mike lowered the protective visor on his helmet to protect his eyes from the nuclear flash. He wasn't worried about the blast wave since Deck explained that there is no air in space, which means there is no shock wave. Mike saw the reflection of the flash and realized that the device had worked. He refrained from looking at her, concentrating on his instruments to make sure he was on the right course for re-entry. He waited a minute, then two. Then he looked and saw a huge fireball in space where the alien ship was. He wasn't sure, but he thought he saw flashes of debris flying from where the ship had been. He sighed with relief and reached for the communications console. At that moment, his collision alarm sounded and something struck the left side of his ship, sending it spinning uncontrollably. Not this, Mike cursed, quickly reacting to the collision. Luckily, Deck had prepared him well. Using his thrusters, he stabilized the rotation and was able to take control of the Little Angel. But by that point, he had used more fuel than he had planned, and now he wondered whether he would have enough to return. "Don't worry, honey. Daddy's going home," Mike said. He turned on the microphone, hoping to contact the base, but all he heard was static. He wondered if the collision had damaged his antenna. "Sir, the package has been delivered," one of the operators announced. "Seath Spruce has been completely destroyed." "Fine. Any news from 67? Asked General Allen. "No, sir. We can't contact him." "Damn it. Where's Barnes?" "I have no idea, sir. We lost him immediately after the explosion." "Was he at a safe distance from the alien ship when the device exploded?" "As far as we can tell, yes, sir," the operator responded. "It's like he just disappeared, sir." "Find him, now." "Yes, sir. We're already looking." The operators worked feverishly on their consoles as Jim watched, barely able to stop himself from grinning at the thought of Mike's widow receiving his medal from the president. He would have to console her after the ceremony. Mike got his bearings and looked at the surface of the planet below. His nav comp wasn't working, and his instruments didn't look much better. He realized that he would have to enter the atmosphere relying only on his skills. Looking down, he recognized the Mississippi River and realized that he would soon be over New Mexico. It's now or never, he thought. "To hell with it," he said, pulling the handle that was supposed to activate the retro devices. "Muroc Dry Lake is huge, and I definitely won't miss it from such a height." 4 rockets ignited, slowing his speed. At this speed and angle of inclination, it will soon begin to enter the atmosphere. He raised the nose of the X-67, using the mesh on the side windows as guides. This position provided protection for the lower part of the ship, which absorbed the full force of the heat upon entry into the atmosphere. This wasn't what Deck had taught him. It was something he had learned from training on the simulator, and he hoped the simulator was as accurate as Deck said. Before he knew it, the ship began to shake and its wings glowed bright red. Mike prayed they would make it through. "Anything?" asked General Allen. "Not yet, sir," one of the operators replied. "General, we just received a report of a sonic boom, approximately 200 miles west of Flagstaff, Arizona," another operator announced. "Flagstaff?" Deck asked in surprise. Jim looked shocked, as if he was panicking. "No, this can't be. Mike should have burned to the ground by now," he thought. The operators began to call Little Angel, but there was no answer. A few minutes later, another operator burst into the room, excited. "General, this is the 67th. The tower just reported that he made a victory turn before the final landing on a dry lake. He survived. Tell that reckless pilot to get on the ground immediately." The general ordered, and the room exploded with joyful shouts. For a moment, a smile of relief appeared on the general's face. "Yes, sir," the operator shouted. General Allen turned to Deck and Jim. "You two, come with me," the general ordered. The three men ran to the general's jeep parked outside the operations center. The sergeant got behind the wheel and started the car. "To the dry lake, Sergeant." "As quickly as possible," General Allen ordered. "Yes, sir," the sergeant said, shifting gear. General Allen's jeep and several other vehicles raced toward the smoking X-67C, which now stood motionless on the edge of a long, dry lake. Seeing Mike walking away from the Little Angel, General Allen raised his hand to signal the sergeant to stop. All four got out of the jeep as the emergency and rescue truck pulled up next to the X-67. "Mike, I can't believe it. You survived," Jim shouted, running ahead of the others. "No thanks to you, you bastard," Mike growled, meeting his former friend with a fist that seemed to come straight from the Golden Gate Bridge. "What the hell?" General Allen asked, shocked that Mike had just punched his commander right in the nose in front of witnesses. "What does this mean, Major?" "I think I can explain that, sir," came the voice of another man behind the general. General Allen turned around to see an Army colonel emerging from an olive-green official car. "Colonel Carlisle, do you have a report that can explain this?" asked the general. "Yes, sir, we do," Harold replied. He took the control modules that Staff Sergeant Newton had given him that morning from the bag slung over his shoulder and handed them to General Allen. "What is this?" asked the general. "Control modules for Retro 67 devices, General. The ones Colonel Tyson sabotaged yesterday, sir," Harold said. "Sabotaged?" General Allen asked, shock and anger showing on his face. "This is a very serious charge, Colonel. I hope you have proof." "They are, General," said Harold. The general's face turned red with rage as he looked at the officer Mike had just hit. "And I couldn't imagine recommending you for promotion to Brigadier General. Colonel, get this." "Nonsense. Off my lake," General Allen barked. "Yes, sir," Harold said, walking up to Jim with the handcuffs ready. "Colonel Tyson, you are under arrest for sabotage, accessory to murder, and other violations, including Article 134 of the Criminal Code of Military Justice." Deck, Mike, and General Allen watched as Harold placed Jim in the back seat of his company car. "Major, your wife has already been taken into custody, and your daughter remains with us while you finish here," Harold said to Mike. "Thanks, neighbor," Mike replied. Harold smiled, got into the car, and drove away. General Allen looked at Mike before speaking. "Under these circumstances, Major, I forgive your violation of protocol. But if you ever think about hitting a senior officer again, I will discipline you so quickly your head will spin. Do you understand, young man?" "Yes, sir," Mike replied. General Allen smiled, then clapped him on the shoulder. "Come on, Major. Let's take this suit off of you. I'll offer you a beer. It's not every day that one of my pilots saves humanity," said General Allen. "Yes, sir," Mike answered happily. Beer now seemed like a very good idea to him. By the way, that was pretty neat what you did up there, Deck said. It'll be a damn detailed report, but you'll probably never fly into combat again and probably won't return to space. Official Washington doesn't risk its heroes, you know. It's a shame because we'll go to the moon someday, but if anyone is going to stay in the astronaut program, it's you, the man who saved the world. Deck smiled warmly and shook Mike's hand. Great job. Thank you, Deck. I owe it all to you, Mike replied. Deck chuckled. Bullshit, but I'll take the compliment. Take us to base, Sergeant, General Allen said as the four men sat down. In the jeep. Yes, sir, the sergeant said, turning the jeep around. Mike took one last look at the X-67. It was a damn good ship, and he brought it home as promised. No matter what he flies after this, a piece of this ship will always be in his heart. Did you come here to gloat? Rhonda asked as her soon-to-be ex-husband sat down across from her. He had been home for 3 days, met with a lawyer, and filed for divorce. No, Mike replied. I just wanted to hear your side of the story, maybe try to find some closure. Why, Rhonda, why did you do this? And Jim Tyson, of all people. I've known him longer than I've known you, Rhonda said. I know you won't believe me, but I really fell in love with you. Otherwise, I wouldn't have married you. Mike thought about her words. Her tone lacked the same defiance she had shown before he left. You knew he was planning to sabotage my ship, didn't you? Yes, Rhonda answered quietly. And you knew that if he succeeded, I wouldn't come back. Yes, Rhonda answered again. Why didn't you say anything? Did you want me killed? No, I didn't want you to get hurt. I begged him not to touch you. But you didn't say anything. No one. No, I didn't say. I was scared, Rhonda said. What? Jim? Me? What? Mostly Jim, she replied. He can be quite scary sometimes. Yeah, I can understand that, Mike said. By the way, I have something you should see. What? Mike took an envelope out of his pocket, then took out a folded piece of paper and placed it on the table. Rhonda looked at him, not understanding what she was seeing. This, Mike said. What is this? Rhonda asked. It's a genetic comparison between me and Lisa, Mike replied. I was told that the technology is still in the experimental stage, but it is already quite accurate. I know you wanted Lisa to be Jim's daughter, but that's not what it says here. What does it say here? I don't understand this gobbledygook and all these numbers. It says here that Lisa is my daughter, Mike said. Rhonda's face sank even more. What, did this disappoint you? Too bad. Look, Rhonda, I know you'll be in prison for a few more years. Harold told me that you are fully cooperating with him. Sign the divorce papers and we'll put an end to this sham marriage. Agreed? Yeah, okay, Mike. It's the least I can do, Rhonda replied. Can you do me a favor, please? Which? Take care of our girl. Send me photos from time to time. Just don't. Don't bring her to me. I don't want her to see me. Like this. Mike thought for a few moments, then nodded. Okay, Rhonda, I understand. But you will still have to explain everything to her someday. I'll explain, Mike, Rhonda said, after I get out of wherever they send me. Well, it's time for me to go back. General Allen has appointed me squadron commander, so I now have a lot of paperwork to do. I don't know when we'll see each other again. Just sign the papers, okay? Okay, Mike, Rhonda said, wiping a tear from her face. Goodbye. Goodbye, Rhonda, Mike said before walking away. 4 months later, Mike was promoted to lieutenant colonel and officially appointed commander of the squadron Jim once commanded. In recognition of his services in the fight against Kitty, President Kennedy presented him with a specially designated Medal of Honor. After the ceremony, Mike introduced the president to his daughter. What do you want to be when you grow up, young lady? The president asked, crouching in front of Lisa. I want to become an astronaut, like my dad, Lisa said with a smile. John Kennedy smiled broadly and nodded. Hold on to that dream with all your might, the president responded. "You have a beautiful daughter, Colonel Barnes," he remarked, standing up. "Yes, sir," Mike agreed proudly, smiling at Lisa. Harold's investigation into Jim Tyson and Rhonda Barnes ended 2 months later. Jim faced numerous charges and opted for a general court-martial. His wife, Janice, had already divorced him and left for a better life with their 2 children. Jim was found guilty of all charges, including sabotage, accessory to murder, and adultery. He was stripped of all titles, salary, and privileges and given a dishonorable discharge. He was then sentenced to life imprisonment at Fort Leavenworth. As promised, Harold was able to protect Rhonda from harsher punishment thanks to her cooperation. She was found guilty in federal court as an accessory after the fact. She received a 3-year sentence in a minimum security facility with Harold's intervention. As promised, Mike sent her photos of Lisa, but never took his daughter to her prison. "Why don't I see Mommy anymore, Daddy?" Lisa once asked. "Your mom did a really bad thing, honey," Mike said. "And frankly, she's very embarrassed, and she doesn't want you to see her where she is now. I know she loves you and misses you very much." "Is it because of what she did to Uncle Jim?" "Yes, dear, that's right," Mike said. "Promise me that you will never leave me, Dad. Please?" Mike took her in his arms and hugged her tightly. He wanted to promise her more than anything, but he always taught her to tell the truth and never make promises that couldn't be kept. "There may come a time when I have to leave, but I will try my best to prevent that from happening, okay?" "Okay, Dad. I love you so much." "I love you too, my little angel," Mike said. Luckily, his job kept him busy and in one place. Mike tried to cope with the challenges of single parenthood, but he had a lot of support, especially from Lisa's teachers. One of these teachers, Alice Hemmings, lost her husband in a plane crash. Mike met her husband, a captain who served in another squadron, several times and liked him. After his death, Mike began helping Alice whenever he could, and they became good friends. A few months after the funeral, they started dating and became very close. Alice fell in love with Lisa, and the girls became inseparable. In November 1964, John Kennedy was re-elected to the White House. Mike and Alice got married that same month. After receiving Rhonda's consent, Alice adopted little Lisa. "Lisa needs a mother, Rhonda, and you don't seem too interested in her vision," Mike said, handing Rhonda the papers. Rhonda said nothing as she looked through the documents, quietly signed them, and returned the package to Mike. "Tell Lisa I'm sorry and I wish her the best," Rhonda said quietly. "I'll give it to you," Mike replied, taking the documents. "Of course you understand that this means no more photographs or letters." "I understand," Rhonda said, holding back tears. "Goodbye, Mike, and good luck with your new family." "Goodbye, Rhonda," Mike said as he left the room. He didn't see her again. Rhonda waited until she was back in her cell before she burst into tears. After Lisa's adoption, she had nothing left outside of prison except loneliness. On July 20th, 1969, Mike, Alice, Lisa, and 4-year-old Michael Barnes Jr. watched as Neil Armstrong walked on the moon. By this time, Mike was a colonel and quickly moving toward his first general rank. After watching the first moon step, Mike went outside and looked at the night sky. Lisa joined him a few minutes later. "What are you thinking about?" Mike asked. "I'm just wondering what they're doing there now," Lisa said. Maybe they look at Earth and wonder what we are doing now. Do you still want to become an astronaut? Fly into space?" Mike asked. "Yes, I want to," answered Lisa. "Do you think girls will ever be allowed into the astronaut program?" "If I have one word for it, yes," Mike replied. "Where would you like to fly?" "There," said Lisa, pointing to a bright star. "Second star to the right, and straight ahead until the morning," she added, quoting a line from the old Peter Pan movie. Mike smiled as he hugged his precious daughter. "From your lips to God's ears, honey," he said as the meteorite pierced the dark sky. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.